Good afternoon, everyone at the EuroCIO Annual Conference 2020, and welcome back to the fourth and final day of the summit. My name is Magnus Franklin. I'm a strategy consultant at a company called Teneo in Brussels. Before that, I was a journalist on technology regulation for a newswire called MLEX. And I'm delighted to be here with you today to discuss a full afternoon of policy, I dare say. Last week we heard from CIOs and technology providers about their digital journeys, and yesterday as well. And I think we've all got a good sense of how profoundly, in the context of the pandemic, everyone's life has changed, and in particular for the CIOs in this room today, in tackling all the disruption that COVID has brought. You may be aware as well that this event was originally planned for March, and for obvious reasons didn't go ahead then, and now it's been brought online into this wonderful platform that you're all watching us on, provided by Accenture. So I would encourage you, once the discussions are done and you've taken all your notes, to explore the features on the platform. They're quite cool. You can interact with people, you can network, you can meet the EuroCIO board, and our sponsors. And to make it work properly, I'd really encourage you to set up your profile, including the interests that you have, because that will help populate the networking function for you, and make sure that you meet like-minded people. And just technically, if you have lots of windows open, do close them down. Clear your web cache or cookies if you can. Use Google Chrome if you can. And one easy way to get around all this is to use the incognito function in your browser. That will just override all the pre-existing cookies and settings. So that's the technical stuff. As I said, set up your profile, go visit the EuroCIO room afterwards, meet the board, chat to the other participants. There's a networking lounge with some very funky music going on in the background to make you feel at ease. And you can visit our sponsors as well in the exhibition room. All that is available through the main lobby where you came in and you joined the stage room. You can see the other doors there that will take you to the other functions of the platform. If you have any questions, technical ones, or about the event, there's an email here on screen now that you can use. And Julia, the avatar in the lobby where you came in, can answer any questions in the chat. Speaking of the chats, so on the left of your screen, you will see two bubble icons. If you open those, you will be able to join the stage chat, and that's very important because that's how you ask questions in this platform. You can write down your questions; they'll get picked up by our team, our supporting team, and they'll be fed to me, so I can ask them to our panelists. So just write down your questions there at any point during the event. We'll get them picked up and answered. We have Q&A sessions earmarked for that. So I really encourage you to get involved, ask your questions. Now's your time to get them answered from a very, very good set of speakers that we have for you this afternoon. And you can also chat to other people there. If you click on the link at the bottom, you will see a full list of everyone in the room in case you want to do some sly networking on the side or gossip about what's being said on stage. With that, I'd like to get started on our discussions. For the keynote, we will have a conversation with Pierre, the head of unit for cloud and software in DG Connect, Communications, Network, Content and Technology at the European Commission, who I think will give us a very, very timely update on what's going on with cloud policy. There's been a lot going on recently, and I'm sure we're all keen to hear what's going on with cloud federations, Gaia-X, SWIPO, and everything else that's on his desk and has been for the past year. So without further ado, Pierre, I'd like to invite you to the floor. And given the situation we're in, I think most of us will be watching this from our homes, at least in Brussels, where we're in a semi-lockdown. How has the COVID crisis reached your desk, as it were, in a work sense? What role do you see for for digital in getting and cloud in getting Europe back on its feet from this crisis that we're in? Please, Pierre.
Okay, many thanks, Magnus, and good afternoon to everybody. Many thanks as well to EuroCIO for organizing this event in a virtual manner, despite the very particular circumstances. Actually, that in itself is a response to the question that you have just raised, Magnus. This shows how digital capacities enable the European economy to get through the crisis. And I must say that Europe has actually demonstrated throughout this crisis the value of its digital infrastructure. Without a solid network connectivity across Europe, without a solid data processing infrastructure, we will not be there today. The level of the magnitude of the crisis will be totally different. So the digital has been playing a key role in helping the European economy to sustain a minimum level of activity during this very tough period.
Please go ahead.
But we shouldn't stop there. I think this has also enabled to raise the importance of continuing investing in digital infrastructure in the coming decade to prepare Europe to face future crises. So that's one of the reasons the Commission has come up with this comprehensive resilience and recovery package, which includes a significant amount of money to be invested in digital. Just to quote the president of the Commission, and that was further validated by all European member states in the Council conclusion at the beginning of the month, we do expect that 20% of the 650 billion euros that will be injected in the European economy in the coming 3-4 years will be dedicated to digital.
How I mean, we have CIOs with us in this room now, and I mean, their job is to buy and develop the ICT for the companies. How from their point of view, how will this money benefit them or affect their work? Will it be going to them directly to help them in their digitization journeys, or will it be for the infrastructure that they will be buying services on, etc.? Or maybe you can give us a sense of how it trickles down to this audience.
Yes, so it's going to be twofold, actually. So the first channel of injecting the money will be to support the development of digital sovereignty in Europe. I think in the recent geopolitical context, Europe has come to realize that we must master a certain number of technologies in Europe, what we call the key digital technologies, microelectronics, artificial intelligence, 5G, cloud, and more broadly, data infrastructure, data services, cybersecurity. We must master those technologies in Europe. So we can expect that through the Resilience and Recovery Fund, we're going to inject a significant amount of money to support and sustain the development of and deployment of European grown technologies in those sectors. But deploying technology is not enough. We must have user industries, and that's where it meets the first part of your question, which is today's audience in EuroCIO. So user from all industries that will need to also invest to be able to deploy those technologies in their organization. And we're not naive that this is just happening like this. This will require a significant amount of effort. It will require to upskill the staff, the employees that are in those organizations, and it will require to actually buy those technologies. So all these elements of upskilling, deployment of technology, adoption through procurement and or purchase in the private sector will also be part of the resilience and recovery implementation.
Okay, and just, I mean, how will the money flow? Is it coming from the EU coffers directly, or through PPPs, or through national governments, or where should the companies turn if they think they need a helping hand on their digital transformation?
Yes. So the member states will be the key point of entry for companies. So the Commission is going to distribute the money to the member states, and it's the member state that will devise their own plan depending on their own needs. So every country has different strengths, different gaps, and it will be up to the member state to decide where they want to inject the money. So if I may just give a simple advice to all the CIOs that are listening to us, go speak to your ministry. Go speak to your Ministry of Finance. Go to speak to your Ministry of Telecom or Digital, because they will be the key point of entry for you to benefit from these programs.
Okay, and speaking of currencies or money of sorts, I mean, the data is the new oil is not really a notion I buy into, but it's still where a lot of the companies today will derive value for their organizations, and where the digitization story really manifests itself in many ways. We've heard some discussion already over the past 3 days about data, about data pools, about data access, and so on. And I think, given that we've had some different perspectives, I think you being in charge of cloud at the European Commission, we'd all like to hear how you see the EU perspective on data access, data valorization, etc., from where you sit.
Yes. So we have everything that it takes to be successful in the data economy in Europe. We often hear Europe is lagging behind, we're late. That's absolutely not the case. We have everything that it takes to take the next big wave of digital transformation, notably in the industrial area. I can really concur that on the consumer side, we have really been losing out to the large global hyperscalers. So B2C, we've not been capable of taking that wave, but we really are well equipped to take on the next wave, which will concern the digital transformation of various sectors of the European economy: health, energy, transport, retail, entertainment, banking and finance, public sector, of course. We have the different components, but we can only be successful if we bring these together properly. So for that purpose, we must put in place a number of framework conditions around the data economy. We have a solid legislative framework, probably the most solid framework in the world. There is no other place, no other continent in the world that is better equipped than Europe in terms of data protection, in terms of free flow of data, in terms of intellectual property protection. So we must build on this to overcome the current fragmentation that exists, notably because data are very being generated locally, and companies don't know how they could best exploit this. So that's where bringing our capacities, our forces together can really play to our advantage. Very often companies don't know what are the rules under which they can share data, monetize data, or license data sets. On occasion, they will have a commercial interest to do this. In other occasion, that will be to create a collaborative ecosystem around this. Let me give a couple examples of this. You take connected automated driving. Connected cars, automated cars will not work across the European single market if there is no exchange of data among the different car manufacturers, and then operationally when you have cars coming at a crossroad, so that the data generated by the car can be recognized by the traffic management system. So that requires a lot of common technical standards, but also common ways of bringing the data together. That's why we've come up with this idea of creating common European data space. We see large hyperscaler. This has been one of the key success factor for them. So the concentration of data, notably consumer data. We see that we could do the same on a sectorial basis, where competitors of one given economic sector have a mutual interest to bring their data together in order to have a good functioning of the market.
Just on the, I mean, if you're a CIO, and we heard this yesterday from the UK CIO of Generali, the insurer, I mean, you always want to have as much data as you can, because you can build really cool stuff with it. But there's also a certain reluctancy then to share your own data, because it's in a sense your intellectual property. Do you have some reassuring words for these kind of twin? I mean, they're kind of mutually incompatible notions, that you want everyone else's data, but you don't necessarily want to give your data. Yes. How does the Commission try to square the circle in a sense?
Yes, you've maybe have heard about the prisoner's dilemma. So if different economic actors want to maximize their economic benefit, they have to share. They have to be on the same line. Well, that's very much the case in the data economy. It works if everybody plays the game. There is a risk that just one company takes it all, and that's why we feel there is a need to provide some regulatory reassurance on this. The Commission is going to come up shortly with a regulatory framework that will guide the condition under which company can share data in order to build those common European data spaces. So let me reassure companies, the objective is absolutely not to start mandating companies, you must share data. That's absolutely not the case. But if you want to share data, we will precise the different conditions under which you can do this in a way that will protect your business. So there can be different modes, like licensing data sets, like monetizing data sets, because you can really make very good money out of this. But you can also use access the data of the others for your own benefits.
I'm sure there'll be a lot of people looking forward to that sense of reassurance. So thank you, Pierre. Now, you mentioned hyperscalers, and I think in this community, these guys get a lot of attention and has been the subject of a lot of policy initiatives in the past. It is, I mean, you can't really shy away from it. It is the cloud space is one that's really dominated by multinationals, mainly US multinationals, right? I mean, is this a problem from the Commission's point of view, or do you think you found some ways to mitigate any risks that come with that and neutralize these issues? I'd be keen to get your state of play.
Yeah, it's actually quite incredible the pace at which this market, the cloud market, has developed over recent years. When we published the cloud strategy in 2012, we were speaking about fragmentation, risk of interoperability issues, a jungle of standards. The pace at which the market has developed and actually concentrated is quite unprecedented. So in just a few years, you have 4 or 5 actors that have really gained almost the entirety of the market. Our assessment, and I'm sure this is figures that are widely shared in the European CIO community, is that the Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, IBM, they are owning about 80% of the European cloud market, or the prospect to get at this level in the coming year. So that shows the very high degree of concentration. Why has this happened? Simply because these guys have been very good at what they are doing. The quality of service that they are providing is extremely high. They are providing the capacity to scale up services, to scale up infrastructure at a pace that almost no organization in Europe can follow. Why is this a problem? I will say it's twofold. The first one is the problem of unfair contractual practices that we see appearing because of this high degree of concentration. So we start seeing some of those large global players not playing fair game with their customer, notably changing unilaterally contractual conditions, changing prices on a unilateral basis, and giving very little choice to their customer to switch to another provider or enable this, but at a really prohibitive cost. So we start seeing this as a problem because the Commission is pushing European industry to move to the cloud because it's a competitive advantage for European companies to be in the cloud because it costs less than managing your own infrastructure. We've made several studies about this. A typical organization, when moving to the cloud, can cut its IT cost between 30 to 50%. So that's enormous cost savings potentially. So if all those cost savings are then captured through bad pricing practices or bad commercial practices by the vendor, that's the European companies will lose all the benefit of having moved to the cloud. The second big problem relates to the sovereignty aspect and applicable law at large. So the problem of the US Cloud Act, of the FISA surveillance mechanism in the US, and of Chinese cybersecurity laws, it's a real problem for Europe. The fact that we don't know if there will not be some foreign authorities looking at the data of a European company, of a European public administration. This is really a Damocles sword that is hanging above our heads, and we have not found a proper solution to overcome this for the moment.
I mean, I have lots of thoughts that I want to explore, but on this last one, the Damocles sword of foreign jurisdiction on EU soil and interfering with our rules. I mean, I know it's not going to be anything that's going to find an easy solution, but what's the current state of thinking? How could you at least schematically or theoretically start looking at how to find a pathway towards a solution on this issue? Is it too early after Schrems 2 to get there?
So the two possible avenue that we see, and you will see on which one we're concentrating. So the first one is to look at contractual mechanism or at bilateral agreement with those countries to try to get the necessary reassurance that, for instance, US law cannot prevail over European law. But you have seen with the recent Court of Justice case, Schrems 2, that we are very far from even starting the talks about this. So that may not be the most promising avenue, at least not in the short term. Of course, it will depend on the political development in the US. The more promising avenue that we see that goes along the line of what I mentioned at the very beginning is to start developing European alternatives. So work on the European supply, so that European companies can have a choice, that there is actually more competition on the market, and that part of that competition will be driven by European suppliers, not by Chinese or US suppliers. So that's the intention there, to work on the development of European cloud offering.
I want to drill into that a little bit further and just see how you perceive the market, because I think, again, earlier in this conference we heard about some of the drivers behind, for example, nearshoring, some of the activities of technical digitization activities of companies, and the drivers behind that. And I mean, the hyperscalers business model is fairly clear and easy to understand, right? I mean, you build once and you sell sell in large volumes. Do you see the European market segment in cloud, trying to replicate that, or do you think there are sub-markets within the cloud space where the European ones have maybe an advantage? Maybe the locality is an advantage, or the ethos or the mindset that Europe comes with, the culture is an advantage. I don't know. How do you?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think it would be a bit naive to try to think that we're going to be able to reconstruct a European Amazon or a European Google. So we have to differentiate ourselves and see where our strengths can play to our advantage. For this, there is a major trend that is emerging in data processing, which is edge computing, and which also correspond to the need and reassurance that a user wants to see that their data are being processed closely to where they are being generated. So you take a factory, a manufacturing site, or an hospital. We could easily deploy edge nodes in this sort of sites, built with a European microprocessor, built with a European operating system, and that will process and store most of the data that are generated there. It will also enable to operate European AI, because that's where a lot of the automated decision need to be taken. That's the crossroad I was mentioning. That's the hospital. That's the manufacturing line, where this sort of artificial intelligence deployment need to happen. So edge is definitely one key differentiation factor. There are a few others. So the reassurance mechanism on data protection, on cybersecurity, on environmental performance, and on data portability. So these 5 criteria seems absolutely essential to us to drive the development of a European cloud. And the idea is not to build one mega European provider, but rather to interconnect existing capacities that are currently scattered across Europe and that are meeting those criteria.
And so when you say that, is that the mysterious Gaia X or Cloud Federation project that we all, I think, have heard and read something about, but it's a little bit lacking detail at the moment. Maybe you can talk us through how those two buzzwords fit into what you just described.
Yeah, absolutely. I think on the analysis side, we have come around the same time at the same conclusion between the German, the French, and the Commission authorities. And Germany, followed quickly by France, launched this Gaia X initiative, and which was rapidly followed by the European data strategy on the Commission side, with a commitment to build this high-impact project on common European data space and federated cloud. So we're really sharing the same objective between Gaia X and the European Cloud Alliance. In this respect. Where we see, because we're really trying to coordinate among ourselves, we see Gaia X becoming very strong on the development of technical standard and reference architecture and interoperability requirements between different applications, between different data sets. They have been working very closely with user industries across all sectors of the economy. If you go on the Gaia X website, you can find the extensive list of sectors that they have considered with very practical use cases for Gaia X. So we do expect strong development there. Where Europe can intervene is more on the investment side. So GAIX doesn't have a lot of money, but on the Commission, as I mentioned at the beginning, we have quite a number of programs. So we want to mobilize those investments to scale up the capacities in cloud infrastructure and data services. So that's where the two of them really reconcile.
On the investment side, I mean, there's yesterday again we heard a little bit about where the value of EU funding comes in, for example, on R&D. But isn't investment something really the market should be doing rather than policymakers?
Yeah, that's a very good question. One can argue that in the particular case of cloud infrastructure, data services, as we have somewhat come to an oligopolistic market, we're getting close to a systemic failure on the market. This was recently pointed out by the financial sector. The European supervision authorities on financial services and banks, they pointed out that this high degree of concentration of cloud provider started representing a systemic risk for their sectors, because you have all the banks going to more or less the same actors. So if all the data of this very significant sector of the European economy is in the hand of just a few actors, that can represent a potential catastrophe for the European financial market. So together with the Commission, we have been addressing this issue by putting a regulatory framework on digital operational resilience in the financial sector, which specifically addresses cloud, following the guidance that European Banking Authority and other supervision authorities have put together. So that's a very good example of how the needs of a particular sector can be overcome with the combination of European policy and development of European supply.
Okay, we could get stuck in the weeds of EU policy all afternoon, I think, easily. Yes. But I want to bring it back to our audience a little bit. And I mean, if people were listening now and thinking, okay, well, I'd like to actually know then what the European cloud supply looks like, or I've just there's what's this mystery 20% of the market that I might not know about outside the American hyperscalers. Does a Commission or the EU have a role in bringing these guys up a little bit in terms of visibility?
Yeah, absolutely. And we see this as the major factor that undermines those European actors. Typically, they are pretty successful at national level into tapping some of that unmet demand from those European actors that just find the hyperscaler on the market. But very often, they have difficulties in selling their products or services in other European countries. So the first step we're going to take is to create a European alliance on industrial data and cloud. And this will, the entry criteria, let's say, will be the criteria that I mentioned earlier. So basically, people that are really committed to European law, meaning security, portability, data protection, environmental performance. So that will be a key criteria to get on board. The second aspect is that as we're undertaking the interconnection of those different services to create a federation of cloud infrastructure and services in Europe, we will want to have European marketplace for cloud infrastructure, for cloud services. So what I would like to see in a couple of years from now, when one of the CIO that is now in the room wants to procure or purchase some cloud infrastructure or some data services, that they go to the European cloud marketplace to do so, because that will provide them the guarantees that the guys they are buying from are meeting the key European laws with all the necessary reassurance. and that they won't be subject to some foreign interference or the risk associated with it.
There'll be compliance people all around the room clapping their hands, I'm sure, if that reaches fruition. So thanks for that. I mean, I'm going to bring on the panel in a moment, but I know that there's a lot to discuss. There's skills and there's industrial policy and everything else around it. But just to complete the picture from your desk, apart from GAIA-X and the Federation and data spaces and so on that you mentioned, is there any important policy that we should be keeping our eye on over the next few months or year that you think will be important for this community?
Yes. Maybe if I can mention two of them, they are not in the remit of my department, but they will have a significant implication for the EuroCIO community. The first one will be the review of the e-commerce rules. So the Commission said that before the end of the year, it will come up with the Digital Services Act. So that will detail the new rules for e-commerce in Europe, and you could expect that the Commission will come up with things that are a bit more forceful. So the DSA could be complemented by some ex-ante competition instruments. So those unfair market practices that I was mentioning too, we really want to tackle this, and having the possibility to do so with ex-ante rules may indeed be the solution that this community was waiting for. The second big thing will be on artificial intelligence that will come a little later, so probably beginning of next year. But if we want to accompany the deployment of artificial intelligence in Europe, and this is something we really want to foster, we're really convinced this will boost the competitiveness of the European economy. We must put in place some rules to accompany the proper deployment of this, and that will enable to get the right triangle between having a sovereign supply of cloud infrastructure and services, to have common European data spaces to fuel machine learning, and finally to have all the reassurance that is needed to operate artificial intelligence in Europe. With these three things, we can really be successful in the data economy in Europe and reach to this productivity level that we have often been speaking in Commission document that will really position Europe to be a leading economy in the 21st century.
Excellent, Pierre. That was an excellent run through. I think it was comprehensive and all the details there. So normally I'd close this kind of session with, do you have any requests to the CIO community or something like that? But now we have a panel coming up, so you can do that discussion live on camera, as it were. But I'd like to just thank you for that. Do stay with us. I'm sure our next round of panelists will have questions for you, and you'll have some reactions to what they have to say as well. So with that, I'd like to open the floor now to our next round of panelists. We have Arthur GOVAERT from CIO Platform Netherlands, Bernard DUVERNEUIL, the chairman of CIGREF, the French counterpart, and Danielle Jacobs, the Secretary General of BELTUG, the Belgian association. And I think we'll just start with a scene setter. Yeah, I think our speakers can go out and set out their stall, as it were, on their favorite topic, and then we'll try to have an interactive session and get the juices flowing and discussion. Just a reminder to everyone in the room, do send in your questions. We will be picking them up, so just feed them to us on the chat, and we'll deal with those once we've done the initial round. But I'd like maybe to start with Arthur GOVAERT from CIO Platform Netherlands to give us an overview of how you see the pressing issues, maybe that Pierre just referred to.
Yes, hello. Thanks, Pierre, for this fantastic outlay of what's happening in Europe, and that you're supporting the European business to be more competitive and adopting more data and digital. That is really necessary, and as the 4 associations which are now collaborating, the Netherlands with France, Belgium, and Germany, we really are now trying to step up, also to voice ourselves what is needed to get this fair competition and growth of digital economy in Europe happening. And a few things I would like to highlight is, first of all, of course, the data, which you mentioned, Pierre. Data ownership is with the European business and nowhere else. And that is a mistake sometimes made that the data is owned by suppliers. Now it's owned by the European business. So that notion is growing, but not everywhere, especially not in some lawmakers' offices in Europe, like in the Netherlands. Next to that, I would like to highlight the compliance issue, which is a very strange beast. We know the GDPR, so to comply with privacy laws and stuff like that. And it is a strange way how all the businesses in Europe have to assure that software is compliant. And I do it in a different way. If you buy American beef, the beef is already compliant to European laws before they enter the European market. If a dealer gets a car from a Chrysler from the United States, the Chrysler has assured that this is compliant to European law. In our case, we as so-called dealers, we have to assure that American software or software from any other continent is compliant to European laws. And that brings a lot of burden to the way we have to bring in lawyers and compliance officers to adopt contracts to make sure that we can safeguard compliance to our customers, our use of our businesses. As an example, our ministry in the Netherlands has done a huge exercise with Microsoft to make an addendum to make it compliant. I can't tell you the cost they made and the amount of time they've put into that, but no company could make that effort, at least not the medium-sized companies in Europe. That's one thing I would like to highlight. That's the compliance issue, which should be turned around, basically. It should be not us who should assure compliance, but the software vendors who enter the European market.
Okay, and I think, yesterday we heard from Irina Orsic in charge of AI, and she was talking about the compliance assessment on that side of the picture. So I guess maybe in early next year, when all this has crystallized a bit, maybe some of that wish list will start to get ticked off, at least in parts of the market. So I think that's an excellent cornerstone for our discussion. Bernard Duverneuil, I think I'd like to hear your views on what the most important issues for the French CIO scene is.
Yes, thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. Well, first I must say that we are all aligned on the fact that digital has been a shock absorber for that crisis, which is obviously not completely finished. But we are convinced as well that this is also going to be a big lever for the recovery of our economy. And for that, I think the digital transformation of the major European companies is absolutely key for that recovery. What we have seen during that period is that it's been an acceleration, and that should continue. And we really support the idea of having a very strong momentum from the European Commission and from the national governments around digital economy and the investments that are going to be made, hopefully in this area. So on the user side, as we used to say in our major companies in Europe, we really support that, and we're convinced this is key. What we would require and what we need as companies is really a trusted environment, and that covers several dimensions. I would just mention those and maybe just touch upon one of them, but we mentioned sovereignty first, and this is probably an area where, especially in the cloud area, we would need some strong efforts from everyone to make sure that we have a trusted environment. Another dimension is actually the legal environment, which needs to be secured and also stable. We've seen in the recent past that it's been quite unstable in terms of regulation with the privacy shield, for example. So that uncertainty for the companies is damaging, and it's either a risk that we have to take or an additional cost. So in both options, it's a burden for the companies. And then I would mention a very big dimension, which is the elephant in the room as well, which is we need a safe environment. And looking at the cyberspace today, this is not safe enough for our companies to operate. And that requires a lot of help for us from the regulators, from the governments, the national agencies, and also the digital services providers, because they need to help companies raising the skills, expertise, and reduce the risk, because the space we are operating in is really high risk today. And the recent news shows that it's becoming even more unsafe than before. So basically, a trusted environment in many dimensions.
Excellent. Thank you, Bernard, for that stall setup. And I'd like to now turn to Danielle Jacobs. From your perspective, what's keeping you awake at night? Are you with us? Danielle, are you there?
You're on mute, Danielle.
Ah, yes.
Sorry for this.
That's better.
So I'm very pleased that we have a very great cooperation in the meantime between the German, French, Dutch, and Belgium CIO associations, because this gives me the opportunity to elaborate on other topics my colleagues from the Netherlands and France already mentioned, which I completely back for 100%. An issue that keeps, not maybe me awake, but our members, is the difficulties at the competition level. So I was very pleased that Pierre was mentioning that the Commission knows that all the benefits from cloud, like price decreases, that they can be taken away with unwanted behavior of software suppliers. So a very strong message we want to focus on, and which we are giving to the Commission, is that it is not only going about competition between different players. It's not only don't look only into the competition between different players, between different software suppliers, but also look into the situation when you have chosen software, and especially when it is implemented, then there is a serious problem. It's very difficult to get your data back and the kind of a vendor lock-in. It's a difficult situation. So once the software is implemented, companies are run on software these days. And so we really would like the Commission to look into that problem as well. Second level is, if it's about competition between players, it's not only about the hyperscalers, it is also about smaller companies. So it's not only about the very, very large companies. Competition is also at stake at the level of different software platforms. So that is something which is very, very important for our members. And so as Pierre already mentioned, it's a combination of 5G, of IoT, of AI, of all the importance of data. So it's going in all directions at the same time. For years, we have been pleading for good competition for telecommunications, but that was about connectivity. Now we see that competition is at stake at a much higher level, meaning the softwares and the applications. So this is a very important dimension for us as well.
Excellent. Pierre, I want to bring it back to you because I think all of these openings have some kind of theme in common, whether it's you look at it from the security perspective or the competition or the compliance point of view. But I mean, fundamentally, the problem that we have here, right, is that it's software, and unlike a car, which you can look at and inspect and then start selling on the market, software is always being updated and changed and so on. How far along, and because we've had this discussion as well previously on cybersecurity and whether, you know, ENISA can really rubber stamp something in IoT devices, secure or not secure, the same discussion came up. So has the Commission advanced in its thinking of how to certify either legal compliance or security compliance or whatever it might be, for these kind of always constantly evolving platforms and software type services?
Yes. So indeed the Commission adopted the European Cybersecurity Act 2 years ago, which establishes a European cybersecurity certification framework. So that's a very first step to ensure that future products that will come on the market can be certified. But there are a few steps in between, notably the need to develop specific scheme for different categories of digital product, of different categories of digital services, and that's going to take a bit of time because we're almost starting from scratch. The very first cybersecurity certification scheme that went into the pipeline of the European Cyber Agency, ENISA, is actually pertaining to cloud. So cloud services will be the very first technological domain for which there will be a European certification label, so that you as CIOs, when you go buy certain cloud services, you will be able to check, oh, this product has been certified by a cybersecurity agency up to a certain level of reassurance. There are 3 levels of reassurance: basic, substantial, and high. But that will be a recognizable label across the entirety of the single market for cloud services. So that's a very important test, because if we are successful with this, then probably we can replicate this across different technological area. You mentioned very rightfully Internet of Things, which is probably one of our top next priority in terms of certification. So that covers well the first part of your question, which is basically the technical cybersecurity compliance. Now on the legal side, it's probably even more complex, because there it's really going to depend from one area to the other. Just looking at my own domain in cloud, we have been pretty open in not regulating that particular market, but taking a very cooperative approach with the suppliers to work more on the self-regulatory side to avoid killing innovation in that sector. I think we will need to be a bit more forceful. I think we have cooperated a lot with CIGREF, with CIO Nederland, with BELTUG, with Voice on some of these self-regulatory processes, and I think we have seen the limits of this, notably when it comes to the large hyperscaler following what has been agreed and playing fair game in listening to the European user communities in terms of their requirements.
I mean, you didn't mention it by name, but I guess we're talking about the SWIPO framework here, right? And I mean, between Danielle's point about the telecom regulatory framework where we almost started, and the future and cloud and all the new horizons that we've just discussed. We have SWIPO, right? I mean, we just had the codes of conduct approved not too long ago. It's been a long and sometimes painful process to get those out. Maybe I can just do a tour de table and just get a sense of what your feeling is with the outcome of the SWIPO process. And I'll just run through the order as we were from the start. Maybe Arthur, you want to give your first hot take on SWIPO.
Yeah, thank you. It's an important subject. I will only pick one element of the SWIPO trajectory which we did, is the fact that we as associations have limited resources to contribute to such an exercise. And so the big software suppliers have big offices specifically catering for supporting lawmakers. We, as an association, we don't have. We represent businesses in Europe. We don't have offices for supporting lawmakers and to share our views and give input. So we have to do it in our own free time, if you might say so, to add to content, which is most of the time very difficult and requires a lot of content knowledge. So it is resources, this time, which we don't have as representative of European businesses.
Okay, and what about you, Bernard? I know CIGREF has been vocal on SWIPO over the years. Has the conclusion of that process brought a silver lining, or are you still concerned?
I think I fully agree with what Arthur said, and well, as you know, CIGREF has been very uncomfortable with the process and the outcome of SWIPO. We understand it's a first step, and we really support the idea of going further in that direction. But we have some difficulties to overcome there for sure. So my main message as president of CIGREF has been that, well, we companies need to be well protected, and similarly to the citizens in Europe who are protected by some of the regulations, especially in the telecom sector. So portability in the telecom area has been very important for protecting the citizen. For our companies, as Arthur said, we don't have the resources and the time to invest, even if we coordinate ourselves and even at European level, as we do today with our friends in Netherlands, Belgium, and Germany. So for sure, this is a first step, but we still need to have stronger support, I think, from the European Commission as well, to protect us through regulation and re-establishing the balance between, well, suppliers and mainly software suppliers, as we said, and user companies.
Okay, and I mean, Danielle, you already alluded to this issue, so maybe I'll give you a few more minutes to expand.
I do agree that there was a kind of imbalance between the providers and the users, but we want to be constructive as well. So the four associations decided that we will promote the SWIPO Code of Conduct and we will inform our members. But at the same time, we will give them a whole lot of recommendations on what is missing in the Code of Conduct. So we developed a questionnaire to inform our members to say, okay, if your software supplier says he's adhering to SWIPO, that's already something, but don't forget to ask this and this and this and this question. So this is our way of trying to fill the imbalance in a constructive way. But it is a lesson learned also for the Gaia-X and the cloud, so the European Alliance for Industrial Data and Cloud, which is difficult. Well, I can maybe only speak for BELTUG, like how far should we go in these new initiatives with the experience of SWIPO?
Mm-hmm. And Pierre, I mean, you've been at the coalface of this process throughout. I mean, how do you see, what learnings have you taken from the process so far? And as Danielle said, we have GAIA-X, we have Cloud Federation, we have lots of future policy areas where I think these learnings will come into play. So what would you change, or what will we carry forward into similar processes in the future?
Well, from the Commission perspective, we see that there has been a learning experience versus past code of conduct as well. So I fully share the concern that the various CIO association have just raised. But when we looked at a previous code of conduct on data protection, for instance, we almost had no user involvement whatsoever. So SWIPO was already a step forward in that respect, that we managed to get the various CIO association and user association involved almost until the end of the process. So that was pretty good. So in future occasion, we will make sure that we have the user communities on board from the very beginning. The second important message that I want to convey is that you shouldn't shy away. European CIOs of European companies represent a massive purchasing power on the software vendors that are operating in the EU. So it means that collectively you have an enormous bargaining power, and that means that you need to bring your voices and your effort together. That's why a platform like EuroCIO is so important, because it enables to coordinate among yourself and bring to the Commission with a common voice the concern of this very large user industry. So just to pick on a practical example, but the recent blog post that was made by BELTUG, Voice, CIO Nederland and CIGREF, it's typically the sort of things that we picked up on and could relay, for instance, to serve as input into the review of the European e-commerce rules. Same thing with the CIGREF recent report on vendors. We also use this as evidence when our colleagues were asking us about concrete example of problems that European companies are facing when they are buying software. So please, by all means, do continue to get your voice heard, because it's really the only way that we will be able to maintain this balance in Europe between the providers and the European users.
Okay, Arthur, I know you wanted to come in on this.
Yeah, if I may. So Pierre, thanks for highlighting this, and it's great to see how we can get much more connected with the European Commission and the European lawmakers since basically the start of this year, and that helps us a lot to voice our concerns. And one thing I would like to add to your story is that, so yes, we need to be more clever on buying power, although some of the regulations don't allow us to bring buying power together. The other big thing is that's the vendor locked-in, and it's mentioned a few times also by my colleagues here at the panel. Once you are stuck with one of the big software suppliers, it's very difficult to get out of it. And it's just for the simple reason to change software platform or software solution, especially on the major ERP or health systems. Yeah, it costs much more to change than to pay an extra fee to the software supplier, and that is unfair competition. The way you're locked in, and terms and conditions are sometimes changed before you know, and prices are changed without even adding value. Yeah, that is a big concern to us, and that just hampers digital growth in Europe. That hampers our putting the money down in digital growth instead of license cost. So that's something we brought forward, and I'm very pleased with the listening ear from the different departments, but I hope we can do something about it.
Very good. Pierre, do you want to have any final words on this?
Yeah, no, we very much appreciate what you've just said, Arthur. I also sympathize very much with your earlier point on limited resources in CIO association. That's why having a certain degree of coordination and maybe sharing or splitting the topic among yourself is important, but then get a collective line to take on those particular issues that you can bring back to the policymakers. On vendor lock-in, yeah, that's a major problem. We will push for interoperability via Gaia-X, which is one of its key objectives, but also possibly via the common data space, because for players to be a participant in the common European data space, they will need to have open APIs. So software that do not provide de facto APIs that are commensurate to the European standards, we will simply not be eligible to participate. So we believe this will start creating some of the necessary incentive for some of those vendors to open up, and that this will gradually reduce the cost of portability. Eventually, if this doesn't work, we may have to come up with a sledgehammer, which is mandating data portability by law.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's see how far along that line we get, but maybe inadvertently, maybe not. I think you brought me to my next question, which was for Bernard DUVERNEUIL, because I think you're sitting closest from this group on Gaia-X, sitting in France, and I'd be interested to hear from your perspective where you see the value from a CIO perspective in an initiative like Gaia-X, and how maybe then we can move into Danielle and Arthur as well to get a perspective of how something like Gaia-X looks like outside Germany or France. But please, Bernard.
Well, yes, in a few words. First, we support at CIGREF that Gaia-X initiative for sure, and we're happy it's taking some momentum at European level. The reason why we are supporting Gaia-X is that we have seen among our members a strong need for storing their data, accessing their data, analyzing their data in a safe environment, and with that sovereignty aspect I already mentioned. So it's not for all services and all the data that we own, for sure. This is all about what we need to keep confidential and secured, and sometimes, coming back to the idea of kind of unsecured regulatory environment at the international level, it would be wiser to have somewhere to implement our data in European vault, so that we are sure about the fact that it's not leaking anywhere else. So that's the first step. And of course, on top of that, we believe we would have the development of services which are enabling the access and the manipulation of that data. So yes, we believe most of our members would be happy and would make use of such an environment, not for everything, but what we believe is the most sensitive part of our activity.
Okay. And I mean, I want to bring in Danielle and Arthur on this as well, because last time I checked, apart from France and Germany and a handful of others, the prevailing position in Europe seems to be, okay, we'll keep an eye on what's going on and keep a watching brief, but without any real commitment or statement to either in support or against. And I find this curious, and I'm sure you're closer to the pulse than I could be looking at what's publicly available on. How does it look like outside Germany and France, in Netherlands and in Belgium? Maybe Danielle, since you're bordering France here in Belgium, how Gaia-X looks like.
Well, what is very strange now? It's of course we are at the beginning, so we get few questions from our CIOs. They hear something about GAIA-X, but they are not sure what it means. At the other hand, BELTUG has been contacted by the government, so by the person who is following GAIA-X for the Belgium government. We've been contacted by several American software providers. And we were contacted by the Association of the Technological Industry. So it's starting. So I'm very curious to see how it is going to move. Fortunately, we have a meeting on Friday with the colleagues from the other countries to discuss GAIA-X, because we have not yet decided how far our engagement should go as being a small organization. So it's not easy. If you see all the working groups, all the streams which are in GAIA-X, it's very, very ambitious. So we absolutely need to see where we can bring the most added value from the user side in this context. And I would also like to say something on GAIA-X and the ecosystems, because they see, of course, there's this data space, there's a lot of information that is shared. And that is a question we now very often get from our companies is, if you work together with other companies, whether it's about AI or 5G or whatever, who owns the data, who can commercialize the data, and especially who's securing the data, who takes liability. So it's a huge something.
Yeah, I think we'll dive deeper into that in a second. But certainly, Arthur, one border removed from France, but bordering Germany. Do you share the experience of Danielle on GAIA-X, or is the Dutch position somehow more nuanced?
Yeah, so it is, as Danielle also said, it is quite new for the Dutch organizations, Dutch businesses to this concept. However, what you hear saying is that, as was mentioned by Pierre before, the services of the cloud suppliers are excellent, and the functionality, the way they have been scaling up is tremendous. But so there is, but at the other hand, there's something about sovereignty, and the fact there's no European player or no European competition in that respect at a 20% space. So everybody is sort of waking up now that there should be a way that there's a level playing field, and there are rules, and whether it really means at the end a European player stepping into this space, there's a lot of doubt about it between the CIOs, because it is technology with which you can't just replicate. But you need to have rules and solutions and maybe protocols. So that's why the GAIA-X principle is now understood and supported. But it's new. It's quite new. It's new, the understanding that although the services are excellent, you still need something else to protect and get good competition available in Europe.
All right. Well, I'm sure we'll have a session on GAIA-X at the next EuroCIO summit, without a doubt, given the novelty of it, and it's not going to go anywhere anytime soon, I suspect. I'm conscious of time, and we have lots of interesting things we could talk about, but I think one of the pressing ones that Pierre raised is really about this Damocles sword about jurisdiction and liability, and it goes to some of the points raised earlier about having to certify that the IT and ICT that you buy is compliant and so on. I mean, to Pierre's defense, I mean, this was not really the Commission's own making. It was a court of justice that pulled the rug out of some very, very carefully prepared work around the privacy shield and so on. But from the business end of the world, and since you represent a very wide range of players with their CIO community, do you see the same Damocles sword hovering over you as Pierre did, or is it something that's a nuisance but not really a huge problem? Maybe Arthur, we'll start that way again. Privacy Shield, the U.S. surveillance, the Chinese and Russian laws mandating access to their companies. Is that a problem when you're buying ICT?
Sorry, the last question.
Is that a problem when, like a real current problem when you're looking at buying an ICT solution for your company?
Yeah, it will be. Yeah, so it is of concern to us, but it opens up also an opportunity to do it a bit better, or maybe much better than we did before. So I'm not so afraid that this has happened. It gives a way to do a lot of things in a different way. And I gave you already the example of compliancy, that you turn the compliancy around. The software suppliers should make sure that they can work compliant in Europe, and not the users. So that would be my input to this discussion.
Okay. And what about you, Danielle?
I see two elements. So what I see is within our software asset management group that people are now really puzzled on what is happening, because you have Schrems too, but you have now, for example, a decision in Belgium where they say the data of some government application should not go to AWS. There is an expression, a decision from CNIL in France, the privacy authority, where they say that for the health data it should not go to Microsoft. So I feel that companies feel that the bottom is taken away from under their feet. Like, okay, we are now in a kind of very difficult situation with this privacy shield and our data going to other countries, not only for the US, but also for other parts of the world. We're trying to look for solutions there, but we can only do that if we work jointly. So I really hope that at the European level, from the European Data Protection Board, there is coming some light on this issue. That is one thing which plays at the geopolitical level. Another one I see is a link to competition in the future infrastructure for our countries, which is 5G. As you see now, country by country, that they say, okay, we do not want to have the Chinese vendors, so we work with European vendors, which means Ericsson and Nokia, which is limiting competition. And I'm not taking any political statements here. I just see that there will be two very important players in a lot of countries. And security, okay, you can say it's about intelligence services of countries that might do things with your data. That is one issue. But a very important issue about security is the human factor and the level of the technology. And there, I don't know whether having two major players is a healthy situation.
I suppose at the same time you have the same rules mandating multi-vendor purchasing. So you restrict the vendors down to one or two, and then you force people to. Yeah. Well, there you go. Hopefully there's some policymaker listening that can take that up to where it needs to be heard. But Bernard, I'd like to get your sense as well about this Damocles sword that Pierre mentioned around jurisdictional, third-party jurisdictions.
Yeah, maybe two additional comments. Again, it's a question of uncertainty there. And when we look at the geopolitical field and we see China and the US, maybe having issues together or fighting each other more and more, that brings uncertainty and questions to us. First, it may impact our technology choices somehow. It could raise questions like, what if one of these big countries decide to have a massive shutdown for Europe on the European economy and the European companies? So I don't think this is a short-term question, but that is something we should really think about, and brings back the idea of sovereignty. When we see the Huawei ban in the US, we start having things like that in other countries. So what position should we take at the European level in terms of, safety, in terms of sovereignty, confidentiality of our activities. So on the geopolitical field, it's quite a big question mark for us. And again, uncertainty brings some risk or some costs. And I would like to add one other thing concerning data. It's not only being able to have a secured environment for our data and the ownership of that data, but it's also the question of not having suppliers monetizing the access on that data. And we've seen that quite recently. We've got some suppliers making money just for us to access data, so limiting the bandwidth or limiting the volume or just limiting the access through digital contracts, how it's called. So plenty of open questions yet. And again, regulation will be key, because we really need to clarify some rules of the game in Europe. So, of course, coming back to Danielle's comment, well, we're happy having plenty of competition and plenty of choices in terms of technology and services. But, well, the players need to play with the same rules.
Yeah, I'm going to give you the floor now. Sorry, it's been a while. And I mean, just broaching this quite tricky topic, in particular, because, I mean, none of it is really of your making, as I said before. I mean, either it's external influence from the US or China that you need to cope with, or it's the European Court of Justice undoing a lot of the good work that you've been doing, getting something reasonable and, into the statute books. So, I mean, with that in mind, how do you perceive it as a policymaker from an institution that's, or from a political landscape that's nominally, pro free trade, sees the benefits of open markets and competition and everything else that we've sort of defended for the past 20 years, and then there's this kind of surge, a tsunami of what can only be described as protectionist, whether external or internal, interfering with that? Or how do you have to take sides, or how does it work as a policymaker in the Commission nowadays? I hope you're still there.
Yes, I think that
there we go.
now. Yeah. So this is indeed a very big dilemma, and we remain committed to open market and to international cooperation. So, however, we must maybe rebalance a little bit with a certain degree of industrial policy, so that we can have fallback solutions. And this solution may go beyond fallback. Actually, we may play on developing a competitive advantage in this. As part of the international dimension of the European data strategy, one of the ambition of Europe is to become the biggest data hub in the world. If you look, we have what is the most stable legal frameworks for data in the world. So we have the potential to attract the data of other continents, Latin America, Africa, to be stored and processed in the EU, which conversely would further stimulate demand for European data supply that is commensurate to these European rules. So I think we're just at the beginning of this virtuous circle, which will enable us to continue being faithful to that open market and international cooperation, while enabling to defend the core European interest.
Okay, very good. I'll actually do a little round to see if we're happy closing on that before we move on. I see people nodding their heads. I'll take that's the case, and good luck to you, Pierre, getting that issue sorted out. one of the things that we've kind of skirted over, and I guess for a good reason, but it's really the twin. I mean, the recovery now has twin tracks, right? There's a digital and there's a green, and they're somehow intertwined as well. And I just wanted to get a sense of, especially from the CIO perspectives and from the working groups that you're participating in Netherlands, France, and Germany, what the green picture looks like as a CIO. We hear a lot of discussion around this in Brussels. There's on one hand, big bad data centers consuming busloads of energy, and then on the other hand, there's the opportunity for digital to power the green transformation and so on. So we get a lot of mixed or conflicting messages, at least. And so I'd be keen to know if you see the green transformation being actually going hand in hand with digital, as the EU bubble likes to perceive it. Or if it's something that's secondary and doesn't really come up on your agenda. I'll start with you, maybe, Bernard.
Yeah, well, to put it very simply, I would say that digital would be a part of the problem and part of the solution. So part of the problem, obviously, we need to make a lot of efforts to minimize the impact on the environment, and the big players and even the hyperscalers are very keen on optimizing carbon footprint and energy consumption. So that's a very profound trend and very clear message from the whole digital community to minimize the impact. On the other hand, as you know, digital is also a way to minimize energy consumption while reducing travels and things like that. So optimizing the processes in our companies. There are plenty of opportunities to grasp. So we're quite confident that we would address that trend the right way, because that's not only what our customers are requiring, our stakeholders as well, or shareholders even, but it's also in the benefit of our activities to make it more environmental friendly. So I think we will be supporting that quite significantly. Yes.
Okay. Very good. Danielle, I'll go to you now.
Well, what I can add, because I completely agree with Bernard, is just that we see in our software asset management task force that people are starting now exchanging best practices on how do you find possibilities to have sustainable procurement, to see what kind of clauses you could put in your request for proposals. So that is really starting now.
Mm-hmm. I'm guessing, I mean, I'll go to Arthur, but this is something that investors and shareholders expect nowadays, that all the CIO processes actually go towards an ESG metric of some kind. And I know, Arthur, as well, in the Netherlands, this has been a debate that's been spilling out into the public domain as well, with big data, data centers sucking up all the wind power that's supposed to be green power for the people and so on. Is there a debate among the CIO community in Netherlands specifically about this?
Yes, and actually it is related to COVID time, because there you see the full scale of digitizing the world and digitizing the society. Because what we did so far is becoming digital, but our normal way of living was still sort of the same. We stepped in our car and drive every morning to work, and processes which could be digitized were digitized, but were also still physical. And now we are forced actually to work from home. That's the most sort of easy thing. But you see also a lot of business processes, and I'm from the health industry. You see a lot of health processes being digital. So I'm the CEO of one of the biggest university medical centers. Now a digital hospital visit can be done much easier. digital consult is now done much more easy and accepted by both the patient and the care provider. And you see in a lot of business now that's doing things remote and digital is now replacing the physical things. And I think there, if you look at this, then you get a fair idea about increasing the load on digital, the carbon footprint load on digital versus what you can do digitally in the business. Mm-hmm. I would love to see an exercise being done on the terrible times we're in, the COVID times, what it has done to the total carbon footprint of society.
And Pierre, I'll pass the floor to you because I know this didn't come up. If you were playing buzzword bingo with your speech, I think the green one was left out, so I'll let you cover that section as well.
Yeah, that's so the green and digital, as you pointed out, go hand in hand. So on one end, we have to stimulate the deployment of digital, but we have to make sure that we also take the opportunity notably to retrofit quite a number of European infrastructure that are not up to the state of the art in this area, and that's also one domain where the hyperscaler have been catching up very fast over the past couple of years because they knew that this was going to become a reputational problem. So, of course, now this start playing to the detriment of some of the smaller European players that haven't had the means to invest to retrofit their equipment or infrastructure up to the latest standard. So that's where the mobilization of European fund at the intersection of green and digital can really play a positive role.
Excellent. I think that was a very good concrete example as well of how the money might flow into a sustainable digital world from COVID onwards. I'm very conscious of time, and I know some of us really have to jump off this call to join another one, so I'm not going to extend our discussion much longer. But I think, it's always nice in this kind of, it's not an adversarial environment, but we do have two sets of stakeholders. So maybe I can just run through from top to bottom, Arthur, Bernard, and Danielle, to just, if you had one thing you could ask from Pierre, to look into or to help you with or whatever. And likewise, I'll close with Pierre, who can then get a chance to do the same with the CIO community and put in a little request or a call to arms, if you will. So we'll just do that and then we'll close. But Arthur, we'll start with you.
Yes, Pierre, so thanks again for joining us today. And my plea will be here, stay connected with us and please try to listen to our concerns as you did before, and let's step up.
Very good. Danielle, final...
Well, I can only repeat my starting points, that I really hope the Commission is also looking into competition when the choice of a software has been made in a company.
Very good, and I'm sure that's heard loud and clear. And Bernard.
Yeah, thanks again to Pierre to listen to us and protect us, as I mentioned, not only on the cloud. And I think the relationship between the different CIO associations in Europe and the European Commission is absolutely key to protect our market and our economy. So happy to continue those discussions and understanding each other. Thank you.
Very good. And you have each other's numbers, so I'm sure you can continue the discussion. But Pierre, any final thoughts from your end?
Yeah, many thanks for the great cooperation we have with the National CIO Association. You are really an essential voice to the policy making at European level. Do realize that other foreign interests are not afraid of speaking up in Brussels. So you should not be afraid either to bring up your voice to us. And of course, I'm very keen to be a relay for that purpose. The input that you have provided on different work stream on cloud and software has really been essential to the policy development in this area. So really looking forward to the continued cooperation with you and continue speaking up.
Very good. And I think we're right on time. Pierre, thank you for those closing remarks. And thank you to all the speakers. I think it's been a fascinating discussion. I'm very glad that you all brought such a diverse range of views into the picture, and Pierre for being so comprehensive. And good luck to you all until next EuroCIO conference. I'm sure a lot of the same faces will come back and tell us what's happened between now and then. But good luck to you all, and carry on the hard work. I'm sure it's being very much appreciated by the whole audience. So we can't really do an applause. Normally you would in a conference like this, but I'm sure in spirit and virtually everyone's clapping their hands and thanking in the traditional way. So thank you all very much for being here today, and I really enjoyed it. So with that, we're almost at a close. Before we let you go off to the networking, I hope you've filled in your profiles and done what you need to make the most of the networking opportunities. I'd like to pass the floor to Hugo Nermorny, the chairman of EuroCIO, to talk us through some takeaways from these 4 days of discussion, give you some closing remarks, and bring the whole event to a wrap. So I'd like to thank you all for your participation, your attentive listening, your thoughts and feedback. And I believe as well, I'm going to mention it now before I drop off, there's going to be a QR code coming up on the screen, which is just a short feedback form. Really, really important, because we're all trying to figure out how to bring the physical conference experience to the virtual world. In the situation we're finding ourselves in. Any thoughts on how to make it better, how to what worked, what didn't work, etc. I'm sure will be appreciated not just by EuroCIO but by Accenture and the whole team. So please do fill that in. And one more thing before I leave is, of course, to thank everyone. You see my face, but there's a whole team around me, Lina, Dominic, and Julia, supporting on the questions and everything else. The whole Accenture production team who make this all come to life, and of course EuroCIO for making it happen, and the sponsors. There's been a huge amount of work put into this, and I think it's been almost flawless in execution, which is quite impressive for the unusual circumstances we find ourselves in. So Hugo, I'm going to hand it to you. When he's done, you'll see the QR code now on the screen. So please do use it in the intended way. And for that, I'd like to thank you all very much for listening and bearing with me. And see you next year. Please, Hugo.
Thank you very much, Marcus. Thank you very much for your excellent moderation, and definitely will be our host to our next event. So I'm afraid that all the good things has to come to an end, unfortunately. In particular, this day was absolutely amazing, and I think that all of us agree that this panel could stay for at least 1 more hour, and nobody would be bored. There were lots of key messages, and me as a CIO in particular, I think I had a lot of messages directly from the source, directly from European Commission. I just want to point it out and outline. I don't want to draw some conclusions, but at least today we saw. If you are a CIO, Pierre Chastanet, directly from European Commission, is inviting you to go to your government, to your ministries, and ask for money, because the European Commission are providing programs to accelerate the digital transformation. There are a lot of messages for Pierre Chastanet. We have a lot of solid frameworks at European level. We are more advanced than other continents, let me say like that. In particular, a very important message from Arthur, from Netherlands Association. I'm afraid that although there were a lot of positive activity and a lot of work that has been done at the European level regarding the cybersecurity, cyberspace is still not a very safe for our companies to grow. In my opinion, this is the feedback from all businesses and all the CIOs. I'm saying that because cybersecurity is one of the, let me say, top priorities in terms of inside the EuroCIO Association. Gaia X, it's a project that we are following it as a CIOs and also as an European CIO Association. And everything that has been said, we are concerned about vendor lock-in, cloud strategy, and all the others. one mentioning, because we also, as a European CIO Association, we put a lot of efforts for SWIPO. I'm afraid, the outcome was not necessarily the best one, but so we were aligned with all our colleagues and all our friends from CIGREF and all the other association. And we also have to admit that due to lack of resources, I'm afraid we cannot jump into too many activities, in particular in relation with the vendors. So again, there were 4 days with a lot of subjects: European policies and initiatives, artificial intelligence, business transformation, COVID, and the new normal. I retain also that, again, that Marcus said at the beginning that it's a very good time to be a CIO, and I think we all agree that it is really a good time for us to pass the companies and pass the society through the digital world and pass the society actually to the so-called COVID storm. So now is the time to accelerate all the digital transformation in our companies. One more thing, we as a EuroCIO Association, I send the message to all the CIOs that are currently that participated to this event during all those 4 days, and thank you very much for being with us. In case you are you want to join us and you want to participate to our effort, voluntary effort, to help the end user community and the business community, and to try to be a partner for European authorities, we will be glad to welcoming you. And if you match our criteria, we'll be more than happy to be your colleague. Also, if you are a national association, a national body association that represents the CIOs, we are more than welcome to discuss and to see if we can cooperate or if we can collaborate, and if you can join us, why not? So me and my colleague, my Secretary General, Tanguy Derieux, we will be waiting for you in the next minutes to our EuroCIO booth. I would invite everybody to continue to stay with us until the platform will close on, and to still explore, the facilities of the platform, to explore the networking facilities. Networking is not online networking is not the same that the real life, but I hope we met your expectations. So I really want to help to Accenture. I really want to help to all our partners because they help us to support our event. It's our first online event. We had we will learn because maybe not everything was, worked perfectly. In particular, I would like to thank also to my colleagues from the board, Emmanuel Godin, CIO Lagardère, and Luciano Guglielmi, CIO Mondadori, and also to our Secretary General, Tanguy Derieux, because they helped us a lot in creating this event. And also to our Triumph company that support us. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Marcus, for your moderation. Thank you very much to all of you that attended this event. Please follow us, because the next year we plan to have a lot of other subjects. We plan to go, obviously, online, at least for the next 6 months, until probably in June. So there will be lots of other subjects in our agenda, and I hope we will bring a positive subjects to all of you. So thank you very much to all of you, and let's move on to the booth and where we can chat and continue the discussions regarding the subject that has been discussed currently. Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you.